One does not simply play a Far Cry game. One books passage to a different, distant land and stays there for a very long time. And that's exactly what it's felt like to play Far Cry 6. This is the brand new Far Cry game in a long-running franchise. We all kind of know exactly what we have to do in games like this. We have to go and take out a bunch of outposts, wipe out an oppressive enemy force, get to a big boss baddie, and finally annihilate them and take out all of the lieutenants and henchmen along the way that get in your way. You're going to be taking out military bases and checkpoints. You're going to be overtaking oil refineries. You're going to be racing on top of horses or in hovercraft or in ATVs. You are going to try to get to supply drops before the enemy does. And you're going to be encountering a whole cast of colorful characters that are oftentimes engineered to make you smile, even if the overarching storyline here is incredibly dark and depressing. You are on a fictional island named Yara, a Caribbean island, which could kind of be similar to Cuba, although Ubisoft doesn't really want to make that direct comparison. It is led by a dictator played by Giancarlo Esposito. We all know that, the very famous, awesome actor from the Breaking Bad show and Mandalorian. Incredible performer, and he's great as Anton Castillo, this despot, this ruthless leader that just wants, money and power and obedience, most of all, from his loyal subjects who are completely subjugated and brutalized and murdered by an oppressive police force. And you see a lot of that. Over in the corner of the frame, or when you're looking down from rooftops, you will just see the military just overrun its population. And the reason why Castillo is so oppressive and so heavy-handed is that his island is growing crops that can be a big boon for cancer research, and he knows how much income and wealth can be obtained from these plants in a kind of legal way. And so, there's some interesting kind of social mechanics at play here. Of course, you're going to be joining with the rebel force and trying to fight back the oppressors, and you're going to collect a whole bunch of different people that will join the Libertad army that is going to, eventually try to overthrow Castillo and his horrible ways. And so what you have to do is basically take over territories, and each territory is overseen by a henchman or a lieutenant that is equally heinous, but maybe a little less well-guarded. And so you take them out as you go along. You know the deal. You're scratching names off of the suspect map. And speaking of maps, the map is enormous in this game, as they have been for the past several Far Cries and Assassin's Creeds and Watch Dogs and The Division and Ghost Recon's. You know what I'm saying here. So you've got a lot of territory to traverse. The game starts off with you escaping Yara and heading to this other smaller island where you kind of encounter the Libertad for the first time and you learn the game's mechanics. It's kind of like, they could have called it tutorial island. And so you got a bunch of little missions and stuff, but you join the party of righteousness and then you head back to Yara, and then you're starting to take over territory by territory. And this comes by, getting into different camps and taking them out, and then, the flags will change. It comes in freeing different people that might be bound and being sort of pushed around by the military police, and you let them go, and they kind of join your cause as well. It's done by stealthily sneaking into areas. Sometimes you'll parachute into caves. Sometimes you have to go off and collect treasure, and you're basically leveling up and accumulating a sense of renown amongst the population of Yara, and you're starting to change the tide, and you're starting to get people on your side to take down Castillo. We've done that a little bit before in Far Cry 3, definitely in Far Cry 4 and Far Cry 5, where you kind of, using the public good to kind of overturn perception and change the state of things in the area. We saw that a little bit also in Ghost Recon Wildlands, which this kind of brought back into my mind. It felt like I was doing something similar, like going off and taking out targets in different territories that were just awful people, similar to the Kingpins and the cronies in Wildlands. I remember just being awed by the beauty of the natural world that was in Ghost Recon Wildlands, as well as many Far Cry games. But I think this is is the most beautiful jungle environment I've ever seen in a video game. It's absolutely spectacular. The lighting effects and the day-night cycle and stuff, and with 4K resolution and the HDR just blooming and glowing on my television set. I mean, I felt like I was getting a suntan, and I needed to put on sunglasses sometimes because the sun was just so bright and beautiful. And also the glow-in-the-dark sea life when you're diving underwater and navigating through caves and things like that. It's astounding. Even swimming in the Caribbean and watching your hands sort of dip into the water and seeing the ripple around the water. It's just so freaking beautiful. And I also like that we get to see Danny Rojas, the character that you play in the game. You can play as male or female. They have a third-person camera, and you can see your character, and she gets right into all of the conversations. He or she gets right into the conversations, and it's cool. I mean, it sort of binds you to the character quite a bit more. Also, when you're in the home base, it switches to a third-person camera, and so you can cruise around your area, and of course you can beef it up, you can make a better kitchen, you can create a network of little hideouts across the land that you can fast travel to, which is incredibly convenient. It does become exhausting, like in a lot of these massive open-world games that Ubisoft makes, to think of how much traveling you have to do to get to an objective, but that's part of it. You're also obviously unlocking cool vehicles like retro 50s and 60s cars that might have machine guns on top of them, or a plane that also might have some weaponry attached to it as well, or choppers. I love the hovercraft sequences. Those were always super fun, but even like motorboats and stuff, there's just tons of cool discoveries. Little go-karts and all kinds of stuff that you're going to find in here. And riding the horses is always a lot of fun. I found that I got trampled by wild horses sometimes. I mean, that's the thing. You could just stand in the jungle and stuff is going to happen to you because it's kind of a living ecosystem, and it's so magnificently rendered and beautifully detailed at the macro level and at the micro level, because you'll go inside caves, you'll go inside buildings and hideouts and things like that, and there's all of these incredible details. And although the gun combat isn't quite up to the twitchy satisfaction that you might get out of Call of Duty or a Battlefield type of an experience or a Titanfall, we're getting there. It's getting much, much better, you know? I found it to be satisfying to get into gunfights. I didn't feel like I was struggling with the controls at all. Obviously, a big part of the gameplay is all of the weaponry that you're going to be able to collect, but then also augment and customize in a bunch of different ways. You can put little tchotchkes on the side of them that will dangle. You can paint them in different colors. You find all kinds of scrap everywhere, which kind of reminded me a little bit of the Last of Us experiences, where you're just coming into a space and you're just like, I'll take that metal, I'll take that broken glass, I'll take this, I'll take the medicine, and then you'll go back to your headquarters or your base, and you'll use these items in a myriad amount of ways, and one of them is to kind of beef up all of your weaponry, including your Supremo, which is this backpack that you will carry with you, and they come in a bunch of different flavors. Some will shoot rockets, some will blast out flames, some will have an electrical EMP kind of signal that will blast out there, and you can also augment those and add modifiers and stuff, like being able to reach back and grab some dynamite that you can throw, or a grenade that will put out a signal of all of the different enemy types that are out there. You also have a phone that's very handy in this game, which I think has been part and parcel with a lot of Far Cry titles in the past. You can use that to analyze and survey the ground ahead of you and see all the enemies that are there before you shoot them in the head. There's lots of red mist in this game. It feels like you can take all kinds of body shots at the enemies, but they won't drop until you hit them in the old brain pan. It's not as defined a shooter experience though as the best that are out there. It just doesn't have the AI intelligence, but it's not going down a chute. It's an open world experience where all kinds of physics-based things might happen. I threw a grenade on a guy and he went flying, and he landed on a fence and became impaled for a second, and then he fell off. And coyotes would find me every once in a while, you know? And this is a game that's just so stuffed with things. Like, you can also play this cooperatively and go off on missions cooperatively. You also have your Amigos. You know, the chorizo dog has been a huge part of the marketing of Far Cry 6, and he is freaking adorable. But I also love the alligator. I love the rooster that you can get. Ubisoft, in addition to sending me a review review code for the game. Thank you, Ubisoft. Also sent me the special deluxe edition that came with all kinds of extra DLC, so I had Far Cry Blood Dragon clothes and accessories that I could put on my character, but I also got a robot dog that I got to play with for a little while, but I felt it was a little unfair for me to have this kick-ass robot dog at the very beginning of the game like that, so I switched back and played with the crocodile, and then I stuck with Chorizo. It's pretty hard not to stick with Chorizo. And so yeah, this is a game that absolutely bludgeons you with all kinds of freedom and choice. I mean, even if you've got a distaste for Far Cry because, you know, you've played so many of them, or they come out too often, or, you know, whatever your stance may be on Far Cry, I can guarantee you there is fun to be had in this game. There's just so much game in this game, it's obnoxious. You have like a stealthy game in here. You've got a run and gun type game in here. You've got a racing game. You've got a cockfighting mini game. You've got a base building experience in here. You've got the top level objectives, the boss hunting game. You've got a small flight simulator if you want to just go fly around in the choppers or the planes. It's insane. Or you can put the wingsuit on and go zipping around the jungle that way and see the falls and the caves and you know, the majesty of the high heights, and swimming in the depths that are beautifully realized as well. It's all so remarkable, but the storytelling needs to level up, because I was feeling like I wasn't connecting really with the characters and the story that was being told, you know, about Castillo and his son, the disconnect that they were feeling there, and you know, all the friends that were falling around Danny Rojas, and the drama that keeps getting dropped in, and then the loopy sense of humor and the comedy that some of the characters are supposed to inject in there. It felt okay for a video game story, but, you know, last year we had Ghost of Tsushima, and especially The Last of Us Part 2, and I feel like it's time for Ubisoft to level up with the craftsmanship around its character development and its storytelling. And I don't know if it's a question of kind of focusing in on more specifics and maybe tailoring the experience so it's not quite as large, although I know that's a huge part of the attraction of the Far Cry games and a lot of their franchises. But I feel like it gets a little bit mired and lost trying to go into every direction, but also not making a political statement, I think, is a bit of a detraction here. You know, this is a game that deals with an incredibly heavy and dark subject matter, the oppression of a population of people by a dictator, and it tries to sidestep how dark it can go by the cartoonishness that is personified by characters that pop up in the game and the boss fights that you're going to get into the game. And even like the sort of the mini bosses and the tougher enemies that you're going to get. I mean, it just feels like target practice sometimes, with a little bit of sugary story type sprinkled all over this. But we've gotten farther and better with storytelling in video games. That's not to take away from the ability of the writers and all of the work that went in to embellish all of these things, because you do get sucked into wanting to complete these missions based on these interactions and stuff. I'm just not emotionally driven. It's not the same as it was with Jin or with Ellie, you know? Like, you just really care about those characters, and you want to see where their journey is going to take them. And with Far Cry, there is that still, but the nature of the experience is your attention is pulled in a million different directions. It's almost overwhelming, this buffet of choice, which is a good thing. Honestly, as an entertainment product, it's hard to refute the tremendous value here. You know, not only is there a massive amount of content to entertain you with just the launch core product, but there's all kinds of DLC plans and, you know, multiplayer stuff that's coming down the pike for this. And it's all so much. It's just exhausting thinking about the totality, all of the work that went into this. But honestly, emotionally, this doesn't drive me in the same way that the best of the medium can do. And I think it's time for Ubisoft to go that step and to really take us on an emotional journey with their characters and with their games. And this doesn't just apply to Far Cry, it applies to a lot of their titles. They've got this fantastic routine of providing more than enough reasons, dollar-wise, to invest in their games, because you get lost in them. Whether it's Assassin's Creed Valhalla or a Division game or a Immortals Phoenix Rising and now Far Cry 6, there is so much there that justifies the purchase price. But in that massive collection maybe is the absence of beautiful refinement that we're seeing in some other titles out there, a little bit more tailoring that's going on. And I would like to see Ubisoft do that with a story-based open-world action-adventure, whether it's part of an existing franchise or something new, because clearly the pedigree is there, the talent is there, the ability is there, and I think it's time to kind of rock us in a totally different way with their next one. That being said, Far Cry 6 is irrefutably entertaining and definitely worth the pickup, especially if you haven't jumped into the Far Cry boat for a little while and you want to take a journey. This is a game for you. You know, I happen to have enjoyed Far Cry 5's themes and darker kind of ideas a little bit more than Far Cry 6, but there's no disputing the fact that this is a level up in terms of production value and, controls and freedom and beauty. This might be the perfect escape, especially as we're heading into winter, to a nice, warm, beautiful climate. And that's just been so expertly rendered. I'm going to give Far Cry 6 an 8.5 out of 10.